Hi, welcome to my video case study on development platforms. I'm Carl. I'm a second year student at the front-end development in Noroff, the online campus. I've chosen to do a small deep dive into AWS and S3, and I say small because AWS itself is vast and it has so many services that I could not possibly get through them all in one video. And also S3 in itself is a large beast in its own, but just for like starting out, can be very useful for small developers and solo developers also. So first of all, what is AWS? AWS is it stands for Amazon Web Services. They offer around well over 200 services right now in all different categories, as you can see: analytics, database, developer tools, satellite, robotics. So it's quite diverse, and there's a lot you can choose from. It started in 2006, and then it only had 3 services available. One of them, which was S3. The two other ones were compute instances and messaging queue. It has since grown. Obviously, it's now one of the leading web services on the internet, used by many. AWS can help you keep costs down when it comes to like server-based computing, cloud computing, storage, and other such things that might, well, if you wanted to have it on premises, would cost you tens of thousands of dollars just for initial installation, and then the upkeep after that, which would rack costs up a lot. So as a small developer, you can save a lot of money using these services, especially S3. So S3, simple storage service. As I mentioned, it was the first, or one of the first services that were available back in 2006. The infrastructure is based on the Amazon.com e-commerce site. So it originally was meant to store the images and data and metadata connected to the various products they were selling. It has obviously grown to be something much bigger. It is currently storing millions of the data for millions of apps for both businesses and developers all over the world. And they do this using buckets and objects. But first of all, I would like to just show you the process. Of course, I already have an account, but just for demonstration purposes. When you want to create an account, you need to first put in a root user email address. This is going to be like the highest level of access for all your services that you are using on AWS. They will often ask you to make additional accounts through the IAM or the Identity and Access Management console, which allows you, if you are multiple developers working on something, you don't have to like have just one account connected to AWS. So in case someone leaves the company, or the password or the email is lost, you won't be standing there with no access to your AWS. So, but anyway, let's just use an account name, test account 123. It's probably verify. Of course, use a password. Let's see. Just use a securely generated password. this won't matter because I'm going to delete this account. And then you will of course choose your region. Choose the one that is closest to you. It won't have much to say for when you set up the regions for the buckets, because then that you can choose individually. So just of course, to start off, you will choose if this is for business or if this is for your personal own projects. It will not have any difference to say in the pricing. The pricing is pretty much the same. I think it's more like taxation and stuff like this. Anyway, I'm using a personal and my name. Oh, not suddenly changed name. And of course, I'm situated in Norway. Let's see, right, my address. And read and agree. Of course, it's a standard customer agreement. I highly recommend that you read through it. You will need to input your credit card information or a debit card, because these are paid services. Even though S3 does not cost much to use, it still has a cost. I will not put in my information here because I have already done it for my main account. So I will go back to my main account and continue the demonstration from there. Alright, and then we're back into the console. Now we're ready to use S3, and as I mentioned, or as you noticed, I've had to put in my credit card information. The reason being, basically you pay for each gigabyte of space you use. It's about $0.023 for each gigabyte used. So for this demonstration, I probably won't be using more than 2 to 3 cents at max when accessing these files and uploading and such. The great thing about S3 is that you can set up a bucket almost anywhere in the world. As you see, you have a region, the AWS region. So if I were to create a bucket right now, and my new bucket, Carol, I'm doing this just because the naming convention is so that this is global. So there's a high likelihood that your first name for the bucket will be taken by someone else. So choose a bucket name that is personal to you and also easy to remember. Then the AWS region, as you can see, we can choose many different regions here. Some are blocked. Either I'm not sure if this is enterprise or personal version differences, or if it's just latency. I'm going to hedge my bets on it being that the enterprise versioning has more access to more sites. Anyhow, I am in Europe, and the closest to me would be Stockholm. Then you have the object ownership. This determines who can upload images or files, or objects as they are called in S3, to the buckets. With ACLS disabled, the ACL is the access control lists, which then it determines who have access. As you can see, since as at the time of me recording this, there are changes coming to these permission changes. But for now, just follow the recommended settings. Also, you can block public access. It is by default checked off, and you will get warnings stating that if you do not block, then unknown users may upload objects to your buckets, which is, in some cases you would have it open, but then using other like third-party software, which I will show you later, to manage access, because just as As it is now, someone else can't come and just upload to my bucket. They need to know about the bucket, they need to know the pathing, and such and such. But these are just steps to make everything more secure. So let's just keep it on for now. Bucket versioning, that means, as you see, keeping multiple variants of an object in the same bucket. So like if you enable it, you can have two different versions of the same image. For example, let's say I have a text file and I write 2 paragraphs, save to the bucket, and then I fetch that text file again after some time, write more paragraph, and upload again to the bucket. The bucket will recognize, hey, this is the same text file from earlier, however it has been changed, so I will give you a new unique identifier to differentiate between the two files, which is great because then for like if you need to like keep tabs on your progress, then you can see the version history from the beginning to the end. Tags optional. I haven't set myself into it too much. Decryption, just kept it to the standard or the default. Advanced settings I haven't touched, will not touch. This is a beginner's tutorial after all. Then create bucket. And we have a bucket. So my new bucket. As you can see, there are no items in it. You can upload files to it in 2 ways. You can drag and drop and press upload. And just close that. You can also choose to press the upload button and add files. And I will choose to do that verb. Upload. So, alright. So, back to the main console. I'm now going to show you how to access or how you can view images that are stored within your bucket, but you cannot access images directly in S3. S3 only saves the objects and the metadata associated with the file. So there's, like, as you can see, there's no Windows-based hierarchy here. You can only access the metadata for the image itself. So if I were to open this, and here's the URL for it, I would get this access denied, also because I do not have a user set up to access this, which I have done with the other bucket. Go here and this. Here, for this bucket, I have set up in my first, there's a whole tutorial for it. I will not go through it, but I will link it in the description. So if you want to, you can check it out later. It consists of using these 3, or mainly Cognito and IAM, to access the information, and using an SDK, AWS SDK for JavaScript specifically, that allows me to render the images on a website. Okay, so to begin with, I had to use Cognito, or this is called federated identities. I'm not going to show you the steps because it takes too long, and I spent a lot of time setting it up off camera. Short of it is, here I have identities that are that have authorized access to access the images in my bucket. It is set up. The main thing that is important here is that both the bucket and the identity pool, or the users, are in the same region. So if you have a bucket that is placed in Europe, for example Stockholm, and the users are from a different region, they will not have access to it. So this is very important. Now, Also had to make a policy for this. It is in the guides, the tutorial. This is just how it looks like. It's a very simple policy. Most rules also for the buckets are made with policies, and they do look like they're either written in JSON or with a visual editor like this. I've used JSON because the tutorial gave me a JSON snippet to use. All I had to do was change the resource pathing, as you can see, to my bucket name that I currently want to access. Just press cancel there, so I don't do any changes. Next up, I used CodePen, and you get some HTML and JavaScript that you need to do. I have done some changes to it. There's a script and some HTML. See, for the HTML, as you see, it's just a simple script that links to the SDK bundler for Amazon or the AWS, and you have this JavaScript. The tutorial, as you see, I pasted this from the tutorial. It tells you step by step, like replace bucket name. It would say bucket name here with the actual bucket that you have created, and then this block of code is the same as this, and this is why it is important that the region is the same as the bucket, or that the ID pool region is the same as the bucket region. And then there's just more code. The scripts makes it so that you can go in, see the pictures that are stored. You can't click these pictures, unfortunately, but it is a way to easily access your stored pictures inside an S3 bucket. That about covers it. How I have been using S3 for now. I definitely see the pros of using this. Of course, there are some cons to it. It is difficult to use. The interface, all the tutorials, or not the tutorials, but the hoops you have to jump through to get this working properly could be streamlined to make it more user-friendly. I've spent just for the photo album SDK, I spent a whole afternoon, about 6 hours trying to get it to work properly. One thing being that since, as of this recording, as you probably saw earlier when I was going through some of the steps, and also you probably be seeing it in the top of the browser window. AWS is in the they are in the process of updating the console layout, making it new. This unfortunately means that many of the tutorials, if you do not have access to the original console right now, the tutorials will be kind of outdated. The steps will not correlate with each other, which is kind of a hassle. I had to spend a lot of time Googling, or trying and failing. That aside, there are many benefits of S3 I clearly can see. One of it is like the performance, the scalability, the availability, but also the durability. If you were to set up buckets, let's see. If you were to set up buckets, multiple buckets all across the globe with the same information, you could still, it's not like if you have one in Africa, one in America, one in Asia, Europe. It's not that you cannot access them. You can access them anywhere in the world. The region will determine how quickly you can get the data from the bucket. For some, like for uploading to the US East region, it takes about half a second. But if I would do it to the like to the Swedish buckets, it would just take a millisecond. The computer would be the bottleneck, not the upload time. So the S3 standard pricing, it starts out for the standard tier, and as I mentioned, $0.023 dollars per gig, up to the first 50 terabytes a month, which, well, me as a solo dev would have to work my butt off to manage to fill out. And as you see, it scales up to 450, 500, and the pricing also goes down accordingly. This is, as you can see, general purpose storage for any type of data, typically used for frequently accessed data. So if these are files that you access a lot, like, well, code, you're working on let's see, an application, and you frequently need to access either let's say, frequently access the files to edit them to make the code more responsive, or the frequency of accessing the file does not cost you anymore. Then you have the intelligent tiering, which is like automatic cost savings for data with unknown or changing access patterns. So if you have files that you do not access as much, they will, like, the S3 will automatically say, hey, you're not accessing these files as much anymore, so we will bump them down in price. However, if you start using the file again a lot, the price will go up. And as you see, you have intelligent tiering, asynchronous archive access tiers, which is even more cheaper. Infrequent access for either a whole zone, like the whole a whole word, or just one zone. And then the cheapest you have is Glacier. These three. These are for infrequent, like you access the files once or twice a year, and you do not need, like, they're just there to be stored in backup almost. So that would conclude as far as the extent that I have used S3 for now. Personally, for me, I don't think I would use it right now. I don't see the need for it just yet. I am, after all, a solo developer. It would most definitely be a service that I would keep in mind. However, there are other services available that are similar to AWS, and as you can see here, I have found a list of 10 alternatives to Amazon's simple storage service. And first of all is Google Cloud Storage. You have Azure Blob Storage, DigitalOcean Spaces, Sadara. Many of these I haven't heard of before, but I do know about IBM. As you can see here, it's more expensive, more usable, slower to reach return on investment. Yeah. So there are alternatives, although I haven't checked them out. But as you can see from the reviewers here, like for example, Zadara, easier to admin, easier to set up, better at support. So AWS is not the end-all be-all of web-based services. Find what you think is best. So, in conclusion, AWS in itself and S3 are immensely powerful services that, from what I can see with my limited time and knowledge with these services, could make like development and like store like the costs of like just making your own server, maintaining the server, upgrading the server, stuff like this, maintenance. You remove a lot of the extra costs connected to it. The downside is you are bound to a third party and you're relying on them to keep your data safe, which in some cases I am skeptic by nature to certain things, and this is something I wouldn't put my trust entirely in S3 to keep my data safe. So I would recommend keep a physical copy of a hard drive with the most important things. Yeah, I think that is the extent of my my case study. Thank you for watching. Yeah, have a nice day.